These mountain lords will not hinder my passage, only with feasts. Each will try to outdo the other with his hospitality. My lord father said he never ate half so well as when visiting the clans. Stannis Baratheon to Jon Snow on the Northern Mountain Clans. A Dance with Dragons Chapter 17. Jon 4. Most assume that because the North is the sole remaining first main kingdom of Westeros, that it is the least culturally diverse. But this is far from the truth. The North, while descending from the First Men, still has several unique people groups with their own customs and culture. Maybe the largest of these groups is the clans of the Northern Mountains, who are especially famed for their adherence to the laws of hospitality, such as guest rights. These petty lords who rule these small clans often vie with one another to be the most open-handed of hosts, giving guests and each other warm welcomes, copious amounts of food and gifts. Most of these clans are located largely in the mountainous regions beyond the Wolfswood, in the high valleys and meadows, and along the Bay of Ice and certain rivers of the north. They owe their allegiance to the Starks, but their interclan disputes have often created difficulties for the Lord of Winterfell and the Kings of Winter before them, forcing them to send men into the mountains to quell the bloodshed, or to summon the chiefs to Winterfell to argue their cases, where the Lord or King of House Stark would pass their judgment. From what we can tell, for the most part, these clans abide by these judgments. The most powerful of the northern clans are the Wolves, the fisherfolk who dwell along the shores of the Bay of Ice. The hatred of the wildlings is matched only by the hatred of the men of the Iron Islands, who have often raided along their shores, burning their halls, carrying off their crops, and taking their wives and daughters as thralls and salt wives for thousands of years. Large tracts of the stony shore, Bear Island, Sea Dragon Point and Cape Kraken have all been held by Ironmen at various times. Indeed, Cape Kraken, being the closest to the Iron Islands, has changed hands so often that many maesters believe it's possible the population closer in blood to the Ironborn than the Northmen. Other large clans include the Norries near the Gift, the Hardclays in the Southern Hills, the Burleys, the First Flints, the Knots and the Littles in the high places. Some clans also live along the rivers and lakes, surviving mostly from the freshwater fish. The Norries, Flints and the Wolves have a deep hatred for the wildlings, north beyond the wall, because they would often raid their lands. In fact, the Norries, who inhabit parts of the Gift, the land granted to the Night's Watch to farm and tax, are noted close friends and allies of the Night's Watch. In battle, clan champions fight with huge two-handed greatswords or axes, and sometimes armour themselves in mail. The common men sling stones or wield staffs of mountain ash. Clansmen wear ragged skins and studded leather, and some disguise themselves with leaves and brush with a more ambush fighting style. They breed hardy horses in their high valleys and mountain meadows, with these horses famed as war horses given their size and strength. The chiefs of these clans are given the treatment of a lord by the Lords of Winterfell, House Stark, but in many ways this title is honorary given the way leadership in the clan system tends to work. Among themselves, the clansmen style their clan leader as the name of the clan. For example, the chieftain of Clan Norrie would be known as the Norrie. The practice extends to other usages. For example, Lord Eddard Stark is called the Ned by the clans. This tradition seems to stem directly from the First Men, and is also practiced sometimes by House Stark and some other noble houses, in particular among the Ironborn, and by some tribes of the Free Folk, who often refer to Mance Rayder as the Mance. Given their high latitude and sparse resources, the clans suffer population strain during winter years. The young are often sent to the Stark's winter town, and old men are often announced they are simply going hunting. Some will be found next spring. More are never seen again. There are some unsavoury aspects to the mountain clans. According to Lord Roose Bolton, some of the mountain clans still continue the traditions of the First Night, which was outlawed during the reign of King Jaehaerys Targaryen at the urging of his wife, Queen Alysanne, whom upon meeting the small folk of the north during a royal progress was horrified at the custom. The outlawing was so deeply unpopular with some of the noble houses of the north, such as the Umbers and the Boltons, so it's not surprising that the mountain clans, who have held on to their traditions for millennia, would be resentful towards this change. If the gods are good, we may catch a glimpse of a unicorn. If the captain is good, we won't come that close. The currents are treacherous around Skagos, and there are rocks that can crack a ship's hull like an egg. Thereon to Samwell Tarly, A Feast for Crows Chapter 15, Samwell 2. Despite centuries of inter-clan feuds and power dynamics often in flux, the mountain clans of the north have traditionally remained loyal to the Starks through war and peace. The same cannot be said by all of the peoples of the north, however, with some proving more volatile than others. Most of all, this can certainly be said about the savage population of the mountainous island of Skagos, east of the Bay of Seals. The Skagosi, who reside there, are little regarded by the other Northmen, who consider them no better than wildlings, and name them Skags. The Skagosi call themselves the Stoneborn, referring to the fact that Skagos means stone in the old tongue, a huge, hairy, foul-smelling folk, which some maces believe may have some kind of strong mix of Ibonese blood, with others even suggesting descent from giants. They clad themselves in furs and skins and untanned hides, and are often said to ride unicorns. The Skagosi are the subject of many dark rumours. It is claimed they still offer human sacrifice to the weirwood trees, lure passing ships to destruction with false lights, and feed upon the flesh of men during winter. How much of this is true we cannot really say. We can agree that the Skagosi surely did once practice cannibalism, given countless first-hand sources. The Edge of the World, a collection of tales and legends compiled by Maester Balder, who served the commander of Eastwatch by the Sea during a 6-year rule of Lord Commander Osric Stark, who is the chief source for much of what we know about the Skagosi, including the infamous Feast of Skane, where a Skagosi war fleet descended upon a smaller nearby island of Skane, pillaging and carrying off the island's women, while slaying the men and consuming their flesh in a feast that is said to have lasted a fortnight. Skane remains uninhabited to this day. Tumbled stones and overgrown foundations testify that men did once dwell amongst the windswept hills and the stony shores. The so-called unicorns of Skagos were once scoffed at by maesters at the Citadel. The occasional unicorn horn, offered by shady merchants, has never been more than a horn of a kind of whale hunted by the whalers of Ib. However, horns of quite a different kind, reputed to be from Skagos, have been seen by the maesters at Eastwatch by the Sea upon occasion. It is also said that those seafarers brave enough to try and trade on Skagos have glimpsed the Stoneborn Lord riding great shaggy horned beasts, monstrous mounts so sure-footed they have been known to climb the side of mountains. A living example of such a creature, or even just a skeleton, has long been sought for study, but none have ever been brought to Old Town, and many at the Citadel still regard these unicorns of Skagos as a myth. Though rarely seen off their island, the Stoneborn once were accustomed to crossing the Bay of Seals to trade, or more often, raid, until King Brandon Stark, the ninth of his name, broke their power once and for all, and destroyed all their ships, and forbade them from the sea. For most of recorded history, they have remained an isolated, backwards, savage people, as like to murder those who land upon the isles to trade with them. As to trade, when they do consent to trade, the Skagosi offer pelt, obsidian blades and arrowheads, and unicorn horns for the goods they need. Some Skagosi have served within the Night's Watch as well. More than 1,000 years ago, a crow, a member of a clan that passed for nobility on Skagos, was even the Lord Commander for a time, and the annals of the Black Centaur speak of Stain, a member of another Skagosi family, who rose to become a first ranger, but died shortly thereafter. Skagos has often been the source of troubles for House Stark, both as kings when they sought to conquer it, and as lords when they fought to keep its fealty. Indeed, as recently as the reign of King Daeron II Targaryen, the Isle rose up against the Lord of Winterfell in a rebellion that lasted years, and claimed the lives of thousands of others, including that of Barthagen Stark, Lord of Winterfell, before finally being put down. We live closer to the green in our bogs and crannogs, and we remember earth and water, soil and stone, oak and elms and willows. They were here before us all, and will still remain when we are gone. Jojen Reed to Bran Stark, A Dance of Dragons Chapter 34, Bran 3. Last of the peoples of the north are the swamp dwellers of the Neck, known as the Crannogmen, for their floating islands on which they raise their halls and hovels. A small, sly people. Some say they are small in stature because they intermarried with the legendary Children of the Forest. But more likely it is a result from inadequate nourishment, for grains and other vegetables and cattle do not flourish amidst the ferns and swamps of the salt marshes of the Neck, and the Crannogmen largely sustain themselves upon a diet of fish, frogs and lizards. They are quite a secretive people, preferring to keep themselves to themselves. South of the Neck, the men of the Riverlands, whose lands adjoin that of the Crannogmen, say the Crannogmen breathe water, have webbed hands and feet like a frog, and use poisons on their frog spears and their arrows. At the very least, the last of these tales is most certainly true. Many a merchant has brought rare herbs and plants from the Neck with many queer properties to the citadel, for the maesters seek out such things to better understand the properties and their values. But the rest of these tales, there is likely no truth to it. Crannogmen are men, albeit smaller than most, even if they live in a fashion unique in the Seven Kingdoms. Long ago, the histories claim the Crannogmen were ruled by the Marsh Kings. Singers tell of them riding on lizard lions and using great frog spears like lances. Were these Marsh Kings ever truly kings as we understand it? Archmaester Aeron writes the Crannogmen saw their kings as the first among equals, who were often thought to be touched by the old gods. A fact that was said to show itself in the eyes of strange hues, or even with the ability of speaking with animals, as the Children of the Forest are said to have once done. Whatever the truth may be, the last of these so-called Marsh Kings was killed by Rickard Stark, who took the man's daughter to wife, whereupon the Crannogmen bent their knee and accepted the dominion of Winterfell. In centuries since, the Crannogmen have become stout and fierce allies of the Starks, under the leadership of the Reeds of Greywater Watch.